feed will also be accessed by Julie Menon and her New York City, the mayor's office of the census. So our goal is to get as many people to respond online and on the phone, then by the paper form. And finally, we'll have enumerators who will come, knock, 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 starting in late April, early May. And we released the census results to the president December of 2020. The reapportionment counts happen as of April 2021. So another important piece of information I want to speak to today is how we're recruiting for the census. We really need everyone's help to get the word out that we are hiring flexible part-time jobs. This is for next summer. That'll be the bulk of our hires. And those people will be earning $25 an hour here in New York City to help with the count. There are other jobs there are other jobs in our area center field offices. There are 13 of those in the 5 boroughs, as well as more short-term permanent positions like mine that go through September 2020. I'm one of 50 partnership specialists right now. We're seeking people in all different languages, with all different language capabilities to help us with the census. We'll eventually have 200 people like me here just in the New York City area. So moving on. There are some flyers in the back. There's one that looks like this, apply online on 2020census.gov. So just briefly, what do you need to qualify to be an enumerator and help us knock on doors? You need to be 18 at the time you're hired. So if you had someone who's 17, they can apply now. You need to be a US citizen. You need to have a social security number and an email address. That's it, and then you're put into the pool. Just one quick thing while I mentioned social security numbers. We do not collect social security numbers. We do not collect bank account information for the census. And as you trusted watchdogs here in the community, if you hear anyone say, someone asked me for my social security number, I thought it was weird that someone brought up, that is something that you should report to us. And we want to know right away, because there are a lot of people who are looking for information, and we only want to make sure that people who have badges like this take in that personal information. So I feel like our partners are all here. Elected officials, colleges and universities, schools, libraries. We're launching a statistics in schools program that'll hit the schools in September. Government offices, local businesses. We need all of your help to get the word out. We do not have funding this year. The federal government does not have funding to support community-based organizations, at least as of now. We can support by coming to your events and being there if you're connected to an organization and you want to come and speak to 30 seniors, 100 seniors, your local board. I'm happy to come and share the news of the census, and we can provide materials like some of what I shared in the back. There are a number of complete count committees that have been formed. This time around, we are not doing any signing of agreements. We are forming entities that serve as complete count committees that help to energize local areas. So those could be as local as the Upper West Side. There's a Manhattan, there's a borough-wide complete count committee in each borough. There's a New York Counts 2020. You'll see more and more of this forming, and I certainly can talk to people if anyone's interested. It could be 3 senior centers form a complete count committee. So just to give a little insight as to how the Upper West Side did last time around in 2010, there's a dynamic map online that's like all of our data is online, accessible by the public. This is all of the statistical data that we produce. This is the response outreach area mapper, at census.gov/Rome, you can access this map. You can put in your zip code, your mom's zip code. And you can drill down and you'll see that you'll see the population, the tract that you select. You can see the racial breakdown. You can see the rate of poverty. You can see the ages of people in that specific area. I highlighted, what did I highlight? I highlighted up near 100, about 105th Street, 100 to 105th, near Central Park as an area that's in deep blue. That's an area that had over 30% low response last time around. So those are areas, the light green, while we're concerned about everyone, we're most concerned about areas that have a low response rate. We really want to look to see how we can connect with those areas to get that population more involved in being counted. And if any of you work with organizations which are interested in specific data, we're happy to connect you with a data dissemination specialist who can help to answer more specific target questions and drill into, we do the American Community Survey, a lot of other data. And we're everywhere online because it's 2020 and that's where we need to be. So I'm happy to take anyone's questions.
So a question, how are community boards going to get involved? You have suggestions or?
Right, I think community boards can get involved in different ways. They can help facilitate census kickoffs in different local organizations. They can help us to recruit people. They can help disseminate information. Just as a representative, they can just bring up the fact that the census is coming and we think it's important and this is why.
Well, we can keep putting notices up on our website and plus I see 2 questions here.
Roberta over here. So I want to give you an example of two simple examples. A person who was undocumented, who's a senior, not working. How does that person access, if they're told, fill out a census form? How can they access it? And do they have to show any residence or any information?
So they will be sent, all residences will be sent information to fill out, documented or undocumented. The documented and undocumented really is not something that we're concerned with the county.
Okay, but the person
And they could
doesn't
go,
officially have a residence.
that's okay. If let's say they don't have a residence and they're homeless or they're in temporary quarters, then 2 things can happen. We do a group quarters count that includes counting the homeless population. That's another way the community board can be helpful in telling us where those people may be located so that we can make sure to count them. That usually happens March 31st to April 1st. It's an overnight operation. We also count everyone through that group quarters count who is a senior in a long-term residence where they might need a lot of help filling it out. If they live permanently in a group residence, then we're counting them that way.
So that individual can be given a form and they'll fill it out and it can be submitted.
Yes, and it can be filled out. You'll see the way the census, it can be filled out at a computer at the facility. It can be filled out through the paper form. It can be filled out with a census taker putting in data in what looks like an iPhone.
And the person would be putting him or herself in jeopardy.
No, would not be putting themselves at risk. No. I mean, just to quote Julie Menon, ironclad. Title 13 is ironclad.
Thank you, Robert.
So there are 2 parts to be responded with the online or paper.
No, there's just one questionnaire, but there are 4 ways to respond. So if you miss one way, you've got 4 choices. The enumerator will only come by, and this is how we're looking to save resource, will only come by if those other 3 choices weren't used. So if they didn't go online, they didn't use the telephone, they didn't use the paper form, then there'll be a knock at the door. That's how the enumerator knows. because they know if that person didn't respond, it'll highlight that address. The supervisor will know to send a new address there.
We're gonna take a couple more questions. Grant.
All addresses.
How are students who are in school out of state, how are they, and where are they counted?
So the rule of thumb is that people are counted where they live most of the year. So for students in April, they would be counted in their place of residence where they were living if they're living out of state.
At the institution in Charlotte?
Yes, so that's why when we say once, only once, and in the right place, their parents should not be counting them at home. If they're living, say, in Michigan or Ohio, they should be counted there.
Jay and then Rich.
Yeah, excuse me, two-part question. If Title 13 is ironclad, it's illegal for the Census Bureau to share personal information with any other agency, why is the administration seeking to insert a citizenship question on the census forms? And can you tell us what the status of that attempt is at the present time?
Certainly. So the citizenship question was inserted to help track with voting rights. What I can tell you is it's currently in the census. It has been overturned by a federal judge and has been elevated to the Supreme Court. That Supreme Court decision is pending. And frankly, there is urgency to it, and we expect that there will be a decision sometime, I'd say, in April, May.
We're gonna take a question from Rich, and then if anybody has more questions, I'm sure Jolly will be willing to stay outside and talk with anybody.
So one thing that I think has been effective with voting is for people either to get a sticker or online for people to get a badge saying I voted. Do you know if the census is planning any arrangements either locally or especially nationally with the big tech players to allow people to have a badge saying I was counted?
I'll tell you, I really hope that that is coming. I've seen some prototypes down at the New York City Regional Census Center. So my sense is that there's also, just to know, there's also an effort by the city. I'm here from the federal government, Julie Menon's from the city, and they've allocated $4 million towards a campaign, towards various things, campaign, community organizing, et cetera. She can speak more to that, but my sense is that yes, there will be hopefully an I count sticker or something to that effect.
Jolly, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Alexandra Sarubi, the Executive Officer of the 20th Precinct. I'll just go over some the crime overview. So although for the year to date, from the beginning of the year till March 31st, we are down 30% in crimes, in index crimes at 173 versus last year, 247. For the 28-day period, we have seen a slight increase. We're at 65 versus 53 last year. That's a 22.6% increase. So I'll talk a little bit about the crimes that have increased. We have an increase in robbery, felony assault, burglaries, and grand larcenies. So just, I know I don't have much time, but I want to give you a quick breakdown of the robberies just so you guys can have a better idea. Some of the robberies that we get actually start off as petty larceny, so people trying to steal from the store. When the store owner or manager or worker, employee tries to stop that person and then it becomes a physical altercation, it turns into a robbery. So out of the 6 robberies that we had for the 28-day period, 2 of those began as shoplifting and turned into robberies. One was a bank where they passed a note to the teller. One was in a dwelling. It was actually a domestic incident. One was in the street where they tried to remove headphones, and one was in a public place. Now, Of those 6 robberies, we actually have 5 that were closed with arrest. The only arrest that remains, that's pending is the one that's domestic related. It was between husband and wife, so it's all about tracking down the husband, and we'll be able to make that arrest. Regarding assaults, we have 9 for the 28-day period. A quick breakdown of those assaults. 5 where physical force was used, 2 were a cutting instrument, and 2 was unknown. So now, out of those 9, all 9 assaults, an arrest was made, which is a great thing. That just goes to show that the 20th precinct is making sure that the people that are committing these crimes are brought to justice. Now, unfortunately, it's a little more difficult to track down who the offenders are for crimes like grand larceny, where we have identity theft, where they either, they take out a credit card in someone's name, and then they make a bunch of purchases, or the phone scams where they'll call somebody and they'll say, that they owe money to the IRS, and then they won't be arrested as long as they pay money. And usually it's with like Apple gift cards or Google cards or stuff like that. So with that being said, every time I talk about crimes, I like to take the opportunity to make sure that everyone knows how to prevent this stuff. Because although we do want to catch the perpetrators that are committing these crimes, preventing them, making sure that they're not able to do it is a big part of it. So if whatever information I give you guys, if you could just please share it, pass it along to anybody. When it comes to identity theft, it's good to set up alerts with the banks and the credit cards. Just you get a quick text message or a phone call when when it's over a certain amount. You can pick the amount that you want, and they'll alert you when your card is being used. When it comes to phone scams, it's the same thing. Don't send money. Don't buy gift cards. If it sounds weird, it probably is weird, and it's probably a scam. One of the ones actually that we had for the 20-day period, they actually pretended to be a relative of the person, send an email saying, hey, the woman, she thought it was her brother, saying, send me money, I need money for this. And unfortunately, she believed, and she thought it was him and sent him the money. Always verify. If you get an email from a family member, give them a call. Give them a call. Hey, do you need help? Are you asking for money? Another scam that they use is sometimes they'll call and they'll say your family member, your relative is in trouble. With a quick Google search of names, it's easy to find out who your relatives are, who your friends are. So that's how these perpetrators use your information. Then they make a phone call. It's easy for people to become victims of the crime. Another form of grand larceny is pickpocket. This, we see it all the time. Not just a pickpocket, but the dip from a handbag. All too often, especially in restaurants and bars, we see the ladies put their handbags and they usually hang it on the back of the chair and they have their back to it. They're not paying attention. These guys are experts. They know how to get in your bag. They know how to feel around, and they know how to grab your wallet. We see it all the time. Sometimes they'll work in groups and they'll easily distract, one guy will be distracting the person while the other person is going inside the purse. Also, if you leave your purse, like in bars, they do that a lot, where they kind of leave it where you put your foot under the bar itself. You don't have your eyes on it. So it's easy for somebody to grab it and you don't even tell. They do it quick. So if you could just please spread the word. A lot of times we post these preventative measures that can be taken. We post them on Twitter. So I hope everybody follows us on Twitter. Our handle is NYPD20PCT. And just to give you guys the date for the next Build a Block meetings, we don't get much people there. So just want you guys to know that if you are interested, you can watch it live stream. As long as we have the Wi-Fi, we're able to live stream the meeting itself. And it's interactive. Ask questions, and right then and there, they'll be able to answer them as well, because the sergeant that attends the meeting with the NCO officers, he'll read the questions and he'll have them answer it. So for NCO housing, it's going to be Thursday, April 11th at 7:30, and it's at 218 West 64th Street. And then for NCO Adam, which is 59th Street to 70th Street, it's Thursday, April 18th at 7:30, and it's at 125 Columbus Avenue. So we live stream. Just go to our Facebook page, and you'll be able to watch them there.
One thing you didn't say about pickpocketing: people pickpocket people on the bus.
Yes.
They sit next to them and put their toothpick. I witnessed this.
Yes.
And I yelled, and he ran off the bus. However, that's a big problem, and you don't want to get in an altercation with the person. So did I do that correctly? And yelling is a pickpocket.
I mean, well, God bless you. You prevented the grand larceny from happening, but sometimes we're afraid we don't want people to take action to the point where you may get hurt.
Right.
But at the same time, if you feel the need that, you think that you can help in a way where everyone's gonna be safe and you're gonna prevent a crime from happening, we welcome the citizens that help out. We really appreciate that. And even if you can't do something right then and there, if you can just, take a quick look at them from top to bottom, get what they're wearing, get a description. If they're in a car, get the plate number, anything like that just helps us get them later on. Any other questions?
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now we're joined by State Senator Brad Hoyle.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here. A little awkward following someone talking about crime and then reporting from Albany. Nevertheless, thank you for your service. I'm so glad those statistics are mostly going in the right way. State Senator Brad Hoylman wanted to report to you about the budget, which we just finalized and signed off on in the early morning of yesterday. So I'm slightly bleary-eyed and probably a little incoherent, so I apologize for that. They still haven't fixed the budgeting process. We're still doing this in the dark of night without really adequate public hearings, you probably have heard. But I wanted to just talk about a few things. First thing is our subways. I really went to Albany with this new Democratic majority with the mission to get new revenue for our subway system. It's we all know it's probably the most important piece of infrastructure in our city next to our public schools and our housing. And it's in complete disrepair. The prediction was that fares were going to rise as much as 30% over the next 5 years, and there's close to a $10 billion budget deficit looming over the MTA. So we really needed to get a new revenue stream. I was pushing something called a pied-à-terre tax, which would place a tax on apartments that were purchased for more than $5 million as second homes, not as first homes, but as second homes. And we were trying to capture in this legislation that I sponsored with an Assembly colleague, the global super rich who purchase a lot of New York City real estate, but really do so as a way to keep their cash safe. And they utilize our police and our fire department and the security of our banking laws, but they don't pay income tax. And they, in many cases, don't even pay a mortgage recording taxes because over 90% of these purchases over $25 million or more are purchased by cash, which is really hard to believe, but it's true. So we pushed that. It didn't make it in the final budget, even though the Senate supported it, the Assembly supported it, and the governor supported it. I don't know what quite happened there, but we did get a new tax on high-end apartment sales in addition to the mansion tax and in addition to the real estate transfer tax. So that's going to fund about $300 million a year as predicted toward the subway system. And then everyone is going to be hit with a congestion charge, everyone who has a car. And I support that for a number of reasons. One, because we all know traffic is terrible in our central business district where a lot of us live. I represent all but 12 blocks of the new congestion zone, which is going to run from 60th Street and below. And bus speeds in our Senate district are the slowest in the city. Plus, asthma rates are creeping upward, traffic accidents, pedestrians and seniors, and just immobility in general are costing the city $100 billion over the next 10 years, according to a business organization that studied the project. So we're hoping we can follow cities like London and Singapore and Stockholm with this congestion charge and reduce traffic, as well as create a disincentive for people to travel around the congestion zone. I fought for three things. I want you to know that for our residents, those who are going to live in the congestion zone, because I don't think you should be punished for living in the zone, for living in Manhattan. So the first thing is we got a discount for residents who make $60,000 or less. They'll receive 100% of a discount on the congestion zone through a fully refundable tax credit. We can do more in terms of residential discounts, and there's going to be a special commission to look at those issues, as well as business and bridges and other aspects, including folks with disabilities and seniors. That'll be later. But in statute right now, we got the $60,000 100% fully refundable tax credit for those folks, because I think people who make less should be treated differently in this case, because it is basically a flat tax. Secondly, originally the zone was only going to run along the FDR, the free zone. You could travel up and down the FDR for free as long as you didn't come to Manhattan. Well, I was like, I represent the West Side. What about the West Side Highway? So we fought for that, and now the West Side Highway is included. So that's very good news, I think, for those of us who want to travel around and do have cars and may leave the city. And third, for those of us who live just outside of the zone, those folks on around 60th Street, we got a statutory recognition of the need for residential parking permits. So the city has the ability to do that, but the statute recognizes that. And again, it's going to be part of the state and the city working together to make that happen, because we don't want our neighborhoods to be parking lots any more than they already are. So I think those are three significant wins for our residents, but I think overall we're going to see tremendous benefits in both health, environmental, and congestion. And a lot of this is going to depend on this commission, which will be responsible for setting the fee and other particulars. Like in statute, you only get charged once a day if you're a resident. But if you're a resident and you drive out of the zone, in my opinion, you're decongesting, so you shouldn't have to pay anything depending on what time you leave. So we're going to have to push the congestion commission to look at that issue. There are going to be public hearings. We have a guarantee of that, so we'll be following that. It's not going to go into effect until December 2020 at the earliest. So we'll be working together on that with our other colleagues in elected office. Secondly, and frankly, probably more importantly, was we got major criminal justice reform passed in this state budget, including bail reform. No longer will you be required to pay bail for most offenses. Speedy trial, no more Khalif Broaders, people who languished in prison for years before they had a hearing before a judge. And discovery. Now prosecutors will have to share the evidence, most evidence, with the public defenders and other who are representing defendants. I think that's incredibly important. It was a major breakthrough. As my colleagues say in Albany, we in New York have gone from worst to first in terms of protecting those who are charged with crimes. And we cannot forget that they are all presumed innocent. Sometimes we do in Albany. Third, public schools. This was a tough one for us. We have a new Democratic majority that was pushing for the full realization of the Campaign for Equity lawsuit, which, as you know, says that every child in the state of New York is entitled to a sound basic education, and that means a lot of money that has been denied city schools. We got foundation aid, which is that lawsuit in effect, of over $600 million. That was a win. That's more than last year. But the city is still owed so much more for its kids, so we're going to be continuing to fight that. Mayoral control, or as they call it now, mayoral accountability, was extended for 3 years. The good news about that is that the community education councils have been empowered to actually have a role in selecting chancellors and other administrative aspects that they have been heretofore denied, which is good news. And I was very proud that we did not link mayoral control with lifting the cap on charter schools. The charter schools did not get any more seats in the state budget, and I was happy about that. Next, I wanted to mention fourth, the ban on plastic bags, which will go into effect next year. Another big win for the environment. It's not just a ban, but it's a ban that's tied to a 5-cent fee for paper bags at the discretion of local authorities like the city of New York. So the city council will be acting on that, I hope. This is after, remember 2 years ago, Albany repealed the city's bag fee, which I thought was, well, astounding. And now we've corrected ourselves, which I'm very proud about. Fifth, I wanted to mention that we got money for the Hudson River Park, and for the first time, the Senate actually put money into LGBTQ organizations, which is a big deal because they have not received any state funding from the state Senate for decades. So organizations like SAGE, which helps seniors, the LGBTQ Human Services Network, which is a statewide organization, the LGBTQ Center here in Manhattan, and other organizations such as GMHC got state funds. That says a lot about our budget. And then I wanted to mention, finally, voting reforms. We passed early voting earlier in the session, so you don't have to wait in line, I hope, to cast your vote. Well, we also put some money behind it too, so that's very important. And we took a very important step toward public financing of elections. We know how corrupt Albany has been. A lot of that is tied to the way politicians like me are raising money. Tens of thousands of dollars at a clip, and our campaign expenditures are among the highest in the nation. Well, we closed something called the LLC loophole, which basically allows LLC companies to contribute unlimited amounts of money. But now we've created a commission to institute fully publicly funded campaigns. So that's going to be very important. We obviously couldn't get the details apparently done in the budget, so this commission is going to essentially make recommendations, and the legislature and the governor can either reject them or not. If we don't reject them, then they go into effect. So that's very important. They're supposed to report by the end of the year. And so that's really the budget in a nutshell. $175 billion of your money at work. We also pushed back on severe healthcare cuts that keep hospitals like this one operating. So those are all going to be essentially at baseline as they were in previous years. So I'm proud of that effort too. Thank you very much.
Let me just say one more thing.
One more thing, there is good and bad in the budget. There's no money, believe it or not, no money for NYCHA in the budget. And the state of New York still owes NYCHA over $400 million. So as much as we got in this budget, there's still a lot of work to do. So, that analogy of turning a steamship around in the water, that's kind of like Albany. It's not something that can be done in just a few months. So we've got more work to do. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope everybody can hear me. This has been going on for decades, and I'm going to be quite honest about it. Everybody gets to put NYCHA in the budget. This is not a first time. I just want elected officials to think about human beings that live in NYCHA. And that's all I want to say. You all don't care. Somebody just told me today, the elected officials don't care. That's why I'm on the community board, because I care. And I'm not going to keep my mouth quiet.
No, nor should you, and that's why I mentioned it. The Senate put in over $800 million toward NYCHA, $800 million, and the governor rejected it. So I don't know where the executive's priorities are on public housing. The governor, still has been holding over $450 million that the legislature has allocated over the last several years. Yesterday, he just said he was going to release that money, but I could not agree with you more that there is not a priority for public housing in the state of New York. Let me agree. It is a travesty. It is wrong, and we have to fix it.
We are human beings, and I want everybody in this room to hear that. This is my first time that I've ever spoken out like this. We are human beings, and I wish once and for all you give us that due respect.
Thank you. And I would also say, not only are you human beings, you're customers. You pay rent. You're owed services. It is appalling. So I'm with you. We support you, and we need to really make certain that the governor follows through on his promise for the $450 million that is owed to NYCHA, and that we allocate new resources toward it. There's no excuse for the public housing system of New York to be in the state of disrepair that it is. We talk about subways, there's equally import when it comes to our public housing.
What is the scuttlebutt of the governor's reason?
He doesn't care.
All right, so, Brad, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll tell you.
And just so everybody knows, in Community Board 7, we have about 7,500 units of affordable NYCHA housing. It's affordable housing and it's in NYCHA developments. And we are planning to have a community-wide, worldwide forum, hopefully in May or June this year.
And I will have, as part of the new Democratic majority, hopefully capital to help NYCHA residents in my district. So we should continue to talk about how I can be helpful throughout the rest of the year in that regard.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're now going to go into our public session. Our first speaker is Alex Minier from Bike, New York, followed by Aaron Krolik.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me. My name is Alex. I'm here representing Bike New York. I just wanted to briefly remind everyone about the 5-borough bike tour, which is coming up next month, April 5th. It'll be running straight up through Central Park. Just to give you a little bit of background on what we do, we take all of the funding from the 5-borough bike tour and put it into bike education in all 5 boroughs. All that is free, so there's a lot of after school and summer camp stuff that we do, teaching kids how to ride. There's also stuff for older folks, whether you don't know how to ride at all, or whether you just want to get a little better, you want to try something. We have all sorts of education opportunities. So just a couple things. There will be a couple street closures. Not much that will affect y'all because it'll go straight up through Central Park. And again, let's see, that'll be 6:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. on the 5th. And yeah, other than that, it should be. Yeah, there's literature in the back. I will leave it. You can come find me with any other questions you have. If you want to ask me about any opportunities to get involved or any more about what we do, please come talk to me. I'll be hanging out in the back. May 5th. Yeah.
Aaron will be followed by Zachary Campbell.
Thank you. I just want to bring up an important issue for our community, which is the dangerous intersection at 96th and West End Avenue. I understand the board has already looked into this intersection, but it remains incredibly dangerous to pedestrians. I already spoke to Helen Rosenthal's office, who is entirely dismissive of the issue. The staffer said that she drives it frequently and sees no issue, but again, this is a pedestrian issue. I want to especially highlight this because it seems our state senate has been successful in diverting all traffic towards that street to get south into the central business district. There's a couple concerns. First is that vehicles turning left onto 96th Street to enter West Side Highway cannot see the protected left-hand turn signal. The second is that there's the lack of the proposed curb extensions from 2017 that still haven't materialized. Pedestrians are exposed to traffic. And finally, there's no speed deterrence on West 96th Street between West End Avenue and the highway, so cars go incredibly quickly on that street. Somebody's already died on Upper Manhattan, and so I think it's an important issue.
We're very much aware of this. One of the problems we had, we talked with DOT about getting the island, and they need a partner in order to put a bump, not an island, but the bump out on the 96th southwest corner. The school can't do it because the school's not in session. So we needed to get a coalition of one of the buildings to agree to be the sponsor. Do you know about that?
So I'm aware that it stalled. I didn't get any updates on where that stood or if anybody's.
We've been working with one of the women who was head of that site and has been working with us. Our transportation committee has been working with DOT on it. The last I heard from DOT was a while ago was that they need a partner in order to build the bump out. They have to have a partner who's willing, when the school's not in session, to sweep it and remove snow. Are you connected with any of the?
I live right near there and I walk it frequently and
It's a very dangerous
yeah,
intersection.
and I think it's only gonna get
It will get worse, yes.
So I just wanna make sure that
We bring it back to our transportation, we'll have
That on
those.
our list, that intersection is actually at the top of the list for some time.
Well, maybe we can make a big push to do something.
I was just concerned that Rosenthal's office was dismissive.
Well, that I can't answer, but CB7 is responsive if we can.
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Zachary, followed by Melissa Diaz.
If I go over a minute, Melissa, just pass me your time. We're both here at the same thing. Good evening, my name is Zach Campbell. I'm the community liaison for the Gilder Center for Science, Education, and Innovation at the American Museum of History. Here for the monthly report. Here to provide you with an update on some of the recent developments on the project. Last month, I reported that the ichthyology department had been moved, and that was completed, and that site preparations were mostly complete, and that we've begun some of the interior removals. So since last month, we've been hard at work. We're continuing removals of some of the interior building components inside the Weston building, that's the glass building facing Columbus, and the two adjacent buildings that formerly housed the ichthyology department. We've also begun work to protect the adjacent buildings that are next to Weston and those two buildings, 15 and 15A, we call them, that are slated for demolition. And selective removals of some of the roof of Weston. You may have seen that if you're in the area. We're also continuing to coordinate with the Parks Department on several items of work in Theodore Roosevelt Park. Parks is finalizing a plan for the relocation of several of the benches that were located within the site to other locations throughout the park. Once the plan is finalized, we'll install the benches. Also, I want to mention that the 3 trees that had been transplanted, there were trees that were in sidewalk and pedestrian island tree pits that were moved to other locations within the park. Sadly, they did not survive. However, we're working with Parks to have them replaced in kind, and we hope to get that done within a few weeks. We've also been coordinating with Parks on ongoing tree care and protection for the trees that are within our site, and we anticipate that there may be some pruning upcoming on those, but we're working with Parks to determine what's appropriate. We'll continue to keep the board apprised of what's going on with the project and the community at large informed, and this is where I make my usual pitch. If you know someone that's interested in the project, please have them go to our website and sign up for our e-blasts. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. It's known that when construction happens, the construction fence they put around trees are pretty much ridiculous. To protect the tree, you have to build a drip line. What was the caliber of the 3 trees that didn't survive and the caliber that's being replaced? Are these large trees being replaced by the 2-inch caliber trees? And should you really be replacing more than tree per tree if there's a significant difference in caliber?
So I think there's 2 pieces to that question. The first is about tree protection, and that's a pretty extensive answer. I can have an offline with you after that about what's going on with tree protection within the site. But in terms of the trees that are being replaced, they were under guarantee from the initial work, so it will be whatever Parks Department directs us to do. That's essentially the best answer I can.
What's happening to the fish, the ichthyology?
The fish swam. They are in their new home, which is temporary, but for the duration of construction. Eventually, they wind up moving into the new building, but we had to relocate them as basically to minimize the footprint of the building. There are 3 buildings that serve 2 of them back of house functions and 1 of them front of house. And the 2 back of house was where the ichthyology department was, and those buildings are being removed.
They're on site? It's on site?
It is on site, correct. It is just in a different location.
So our next speaker is Elizabeth Caputo, followed by Elaine Boxer.
I'll be real quick tonight. I have just two quick things. One is part on behalf of the Transportation Committee to let everyone know we've been working over the last several months to organize a conversation about emerging technologies in transportation. We will be hosting a conversation on Tuesday night, so next Tuesday, April 9th, during the time of our regularly scheduled transportation meeting to discuss e-scooters. People may ask, why are e-scooters important on the Upper West Side? They're a technology that will be coming to the neighborhood in the next few years at the latest. And we will be having representatives from the City Council, from DOT, from the local neighborhood, and also from one of the scooter companies themselves. So we hope you can come by at 7 p.m. at the board office on Tuesday, April 9th. The second thing I just wanted to acknowledge was just to thank this hospital. I had a family member who had a major medical emergency last week in the emergency room, and they took tremendous care of him as well as many other people in the neighborhood. And I think as a board, I chaired this board. I remember many meetings I chaired here. We don't do enough to thank them for the work that they do here. So whoever is here tonight representing the hospital, just want to thank you for all the great work you do for our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, Elaine Boxer. I'm back. I was here almost 6 months ago to give an update on the repairs for the drainage of the Bull Moose Star Run. So I'm back again to give another update since October. Just to bring up to speed, as remember, the first resolution passed in this body March 5th, 2013, under Gail Brewer with $250,000 to replace the drainage in Bull Moose Star Run, which is in Theodore Roosevelt Parks. After 4 years of inaction, Helen and Marissa Mack looked into it again, pushed Parks to give another presentation, and then this body, once again, November 17th, 2017, approved after some deliberation. It was 26 approved, 0 opposed. The budget was $440,000 to repair the drainage in the Bull Moose Star Run. I then came here in October. The budget was up to $540,000, and they said it was beginning in April. So what's going on right now is Steve Simon at Parks said in November, thanks also to Ken and Clary for pushing Steve to give me a phone call at that meeting, that they were going to put the project out for bid. They got some good bids in January, and so the latest update, this is fresh off the press, March 18th, Steve Simon says, once the funding transfer goes through, the budget will be $684,000. There are several more steps before construction can begin, including having OMB approve the revised budget, awarding the contract, registering the contract with the controller's office, obtaining insurance documents from the contractor, etc. I expect construction will begin in July. I know I said spring when I spoke to you, but I probably forgot a couple of steps above, and this is probably a 12-month project, although I hope it might be completed earlier. So I'm just here to give that update so that it doesn't fall off your radar, because March 5th was the 6-year anniversary of the first resolution to fix the drainage. And we just don't want anything to derail the project at this point. So we are, allegedly the funding is there. Gail has now moved over budget twice to, from other line items to try to cover it. And they're saying they're gonna start in July. But I don't know if anyone in this body has any power to just, keep up visibility and just don't let it slip again. And I can promise you that when this is all over, and I thank you so much for your help.
Time is up.
Yeah, thank you. I will be exploring why things take so long and cost so much.
Thank you so much. Next, we're going to the elected representatives. First is Santos from Senator Ramos' office, followed by Hannah Weideman from Congressman Allen's office.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Senator Hoylman covered much of what I was going to be reporting back about the budget. But I do want to add that as the chair of as the Senate Committee on Cultural Affairs, Tourism, Parks and Recreation, Senator Scott, I'm very pleased that the budget includes $110 million in additional state park improvements, $300 million for the Environmental Protection Fund, $500 million in additional investments in clean water infrastructure projects, and increased funding for tourism matching grants. We were also able to double grants to volunteer organizations that help maintain our state parks and historic sites. In our district office, we always have a constituent services team, an amazing team available for anyone who might be having problems. We deal with housing, government aid connections, resources. Pretty much if we can't help you, we will try to connect you with exactly the kind of person who could help you. So you can always give us a call at 212-828-5829. And we'll be holding monthly constituent hours in Upper West Side, which is our chunk of CB7, on Thursdays. Thanks.
Kevin will be followed by Caitlin from Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal's office.
Hi, folks. I'm Hannah from Congressman Mather's office. I'm losing my voice, so I'll make this very quick. We have a very busy week this week. So first of all, today, the Congressman held the first ever hearing on the Equality Act, it would be a federal law that would prohibit discrimination about the LGBTQ community. It's stating that this is the first one that we have, but we have it, and so the Congressman led that meeting today. Importantly, tomorrow, he will be overseeing a markup meeting to issue subpoenas for the Special Counsel Mueller's full and complete report, its underlying evidence, and all related matters. If you want to know why he thinks that's important, you can check out the New York Times' op-ed yesterday. It really lays out his thinking and why it's so pertinent and important that we need that full and complete report. Taxes are up, right? So if you haven't done your taxes, you are with many people, so don't worry. We've compiled some resources for you. I know that there's specific things that New Yorkers are thinking about, like the co-op loophole. So check out the resources in the back. Check out our website. We have some government resources, but we also have some local and nonprofit resources on our website. If you have any questions, you can feel free to call us. I now understand the IRC, which I never did before. Our caseworkers are knowledgeable about the different things that are working on it, but we can't give you tax advice. So we highly recommend that if you call us with those questions, you see a tax advisor. Sorry, if you have any other questions about anything federal, you can always find me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll be followed by Julian from Ellen Rosenthal's office.
Hi, everybody. My name is Caitlin from Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal's office. I have just one very brief announcement. On Thursday, April 4th, we'll be having our West Side Town Hall meeting with New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer and, of course, Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal. And so this is at John Jay College, a new building at 6:30 p.m. Everyone is welcome to come, and please do bring questions. There's no set topic. It's going to be driven by the questions that are asked. If you have something you're interested in learning more about or a problem you're seeing, please do bring it. And if you can't make it, you can always just call our office anytime, and we'll be happy to address any concerns in that way. So thank you so much, and have a great week. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question. I was actually going to ask Senator Hoylman, and I had my hand up, but I wasn't recognized. As far as the funding in the budget for NYCHA, it takes three parties to pass a budget in this state: the Assembly, the Senate, and the governors. The statement by Senator Hoylman that the governor didn't want to put those funds in the budget. All it would take is the Speaker or the Senate Majority Leader to look the governor in the eye and say, Governor, we are not going to vote on this budget until those funds are allocated. And that would be the end of it. I guarantee you there would be funding in that budget for NYCHA, because if nothing else, this governor pins his reputation on on-time budgets. So I'd like you to take that message back to Assembly Member Rosenthal. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to say it to Senator Hoylman, but using the governor's refusal as an excuse does not wash.
Thank you so much, Julian. And then we have three public speakers who.
Very good. Good evening, everyone. I just want to give you a few community updates of events that we're hosting. Tomorrow, we're having our monthly housing clinic at Gutter Riverside from 6 to 8 p.m., where you can speak to a lawyer free of charge. On Thursday, April 11th, we're going to be hosting our NILAG Mobile Legal Help Center van which will be located outside of our district office. I also want to let you know that we're having a document shredding event on April 16th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in front of Garter Riverside. I have a flyer in the back for all this information. I also want to let you guys know regarding 200 Amsterdam that Councilmember Rosenthal did reach out to the mayor's office a few weeks ago and also today, asking for that all work be ceased for 200 Amsterdam project. If you have any questions, please let me know. I also have participatory budgeting ballots if you'd like to vote in keeping with the district says. Thank you.
And you can vote online.
You can also vote online.
Thank you so much. We now have 3 public speakers. First is Linda Alexander, Jason Gibbs, West Side, followed by Peter Arnston.
It's the moment of the bid. Hi. And just a reminder that the 12th annual Taste of the Upper West Side, no longer the new Taste of the Upper West Side, is nigh upon us, May 17th and May 18th. This year's honoree is, this is an interesting thing, it's going to be a 501c3, it's Columbus Avenue bid, and it's honoring another 501c3, the West Side Campaign Against Hunger, which has been in our community for over 40 years and runs an incredible supermarket-focused food bank and teaches classes and provides services. So that's our honoree this year. It's an extraordinary event, as many of you know who have gone for so many years. And it's all of the funds, everything that you have come, everything is contributed to our local, our community organizations, including this year, the West Side Campaign Against Hunger. Again, May 17th, May 18th, Friday and Saturday nights. To buy a ticket, all you have to do is go to tasteuws.com. And they've got 2 furs, so they're great discounts and all. So it's tasteuws.com. And I hope I see everybody there. 85 restaurants this year. I think that you're also supporting our neighborhood restaurants.
Good evening, happy spring, everyone. First off, please come out. I've got our April events calendar in the back. I also have a flyer for a history talk based on the book by Jen Rubin. We are it's looking at the RCI, the family-run store that was on Broadway. We will also have we've invited a number of small stores that are long-standing north of 96th Street. We have over 2 dozen up in that area and we're hoping to have some of them come out and talk. And we will also have somebody from Gail Brewer's task force on small businesses in hopes of highlighting some of the challenges and optimism necessary to keep small business surviving in our neighborhoods. The only other thing, that's on April 18th, same night as Senator Brian Benjamin's rescheduled listening forum, but I'm hoping that people will come out for ours or because whatever, but just it will be, I hope, a very good history talk. There will be a walking tour following Sunday on the 21st. So anyway, those flyers are in the back.
Our last speaker is Tiffany from Children's Enrichment Program.
Hi, everybody. I don't think I need this microphone. So my name is Tiffany. I am a local business owner. I just came into.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Not really working.
You may not need the mic, but we do.
I'm here to serve you. So I just brought in a children's enrichment program called Mates on Max. I'm a professional children's yoga instructor. I teamed up with a professional children's chess instructor. We taught at the school at Columbia over on 110th last year. I got assigned as his teaching assistant, and he was just like, oh, do you want to do some yoga with the kids? Maybe it'll make them better at chess. And I was like, sure. And light bulbs went off and fireworks happened, and it was a really beautiful combination. It really teaches them the depths of how to use their body and their minds in unison and sync to develop their intuition, their inner strength, their emotional intelligence, their strategy.
community board appointments. So we will be doing our appointments by mid-April, so everybody listen out for that. And please, if you guys applied and you aren't appointed, please remember that we do have several other boards that we will be able to appoint other people to, or appoint you to nonprofit boards, or, you know, we also have a lot of trainings throughout the year as well, so we'd love to have you guys there. So new funding. So this year we have a new census funding initiative, which will provide money for organizations with plans to reach traditionally undercounted communities. So if that applies to anyone you know or any sort of organizations you're working with, please let me know. And those applications will be on our website starting in early July. Borough-based jail. So the city moves one step closer to shutting down Rikers Island by certifying its plan for borough-based jails. This plan must now go through a ULERT process, and we have been engaging local meetings and continuing our task force on it. And we're going to make recommendations not only for the jails, but as well as surrounding issues such as the detention center itself, the cell design, service provision, and the handling of mental illness. So we'll keep you guys updated on that. And lastly, Senator Hoylman touched on the fact that we will soon be banning plastic bags, and Earth Day is coming up April 22nd. Our office is actually going to be passing out thousands of reusable plastic bags, so please stay on the lookout for that because you're going to need them. So.
Hi, thanks for the update about the census. One of the most historically undercounted neighborhoods in our district is Manhattan Valley. So I'm wondering what organizations might qualify for the kind of funding to perform the outreach you're talking about. It's very important. And I'm looking at Peter Arnson through the corner of my eye when I ask that question.
Absolutely. So that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. And we're definitely going to look into that, and we'll explore that with you, with the board as well. And we can partner with everyone and anyone who comes to mind. We definitely want to hand out these funds. So, thank you. All right. Thank you.
So we're going to go into our business session, and our first item is cards.
Okay, Jennifer had an unexpected meeting at work, so she couldn't make it, so I'm doing it. As you can see on the screen, this is the approval that we're looking at the upgrading and renovation of an active recreation area at the 102nd Street Fieldhouse. It basically involves, there's currently one basketball court and two volleyball courts. Unlike, as the resolution says, 6 volleyball courts. That's not true. There are 2. That was incorrect. The 6 volleyball courts are actually on 105th Street, and 2 are sand and 4 are pavement. In this case, they are 2 are pavement. And so what the renovation is going to mainly involve is doubling the number of basketball courts and eliminating the volleyball courts. So the second, apparently I guess the second basketball court will also be used for a summer camp at some point by the Riverside Park and Service for their tennis team. So it will be able to change over to that. I guess we can go to the next slide. And is that the second to last or the last? Okay. That shows the field house. And, okay. So is that the before? Sorry, I had cataract surgery and I haven't gotten my new glasses yet. Is that showing the before and after?
No, that's showing the turf field and
That's the after.
there it is.
Okay. The ever after.
Okay. All right. So that's the ever after. And there's also going to be a water fountain with a water bottle filler. There are going to be modular benches close to the field house that people can move around in various interesting ways and combine or separate. And what else? I think that's it. They in the resolution, I think it said benches were could be stored in the field house. I think it's actually chairs. They're going to be tables and chairs, sort of like you have in Bryant Park, and they're going to be used there as well and stored in the field house. And the only other change, there was one further mistake in the resolution, which was that it said this needs approval by the Landmarks and Preservation Commission. It's obviously Landmarks Preservation Commission, but it still needs approval. So, any questions? Yes.
So on the far right side is that big rectangle that says 12 inch by 24 inch press concrete pavers. What's the use of that space? What's the purpose of that?
I have to come a little
It's for
closer.
staging and seating, that's where the staging and seating.
There's seats there, benches?
There's going to be
They're gonna be
removable
benches,
spaces,
there'll be
living
living
area.
area.
Oh, okay.
And they can have benches and chairs that they can put in different configurations.
Okay.
Right.
They can also have.
And cafe tables and benches will be introduced
They
for
could,
after
they could
hours.
do a play there, so they could set it up in a drawing.
Okay. Yeah.
So was there any thought, or what was the feedback on the elimination of the volleyball courts? I was surprised to hear none. And I see a lot of people playing volleyball. I was curious if anybody showed up and was upset about it, but those things are used quite often.
Well,
I'm curious if volleyball people they realize that they're gone, but that would be my main question.
Yeah, nobody showed up. I guess not tonight either. We were, Margaret Bracken was aware that this might be a concern, and she told us that at 105th Street, there were 6 courts. And in their, pardon? 105th, there's 6 volleyball courts. And in their judgment, it's underused, and in their judgment, this is a relative basketball desert. So they felt there was a need for basketball with the garage.
And those comfort stations, they don't work now, right? So they'll be updated, right?
They're gonna, once they're finished, and everything's supposed to be finished at the end of the summer, and they're gonna be open all year round.
Great. Can we see the picture of what it was looking like inside? We scattered, yeah.
This one?
Yeah, just curious. So this is what the new.
That's where the pavers are, and that's what the.
Artist rendition, yeah.
And the entire budget's $500,000.
Actually, I don't know what the budget is
Up
for
there, that
the,
looks like cheap.
that's what it said.
This is separate.
That's separate, that's for the field house, which is, I think we voted on earlier, a couple of years ago. Pardon?
There's no fencing around the basketball courts?
Yeah, there is gonna be low fencing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The initial facility, park commissioner, for low fencing.
But this will be high enough.
I'd like to call the question. It looks great.
All right, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Those opposed? Maureen, you opposed? Anyone abstaining?
34,000.
We now have transportation.
One important announcement, and then the one minor business item. As Elizabeth mentioned, we're having a panel on alternative electronic vehicles. What are those? You name it. E-scooters, e-skateboards. The number of vehicles that will ultimately hit the road is probably even greater than any of us in the room can imagine at this moment. So again, we're going to have a panel on that. It's going to be at 7 o'clock a week from tonight. which means that our regular transportation committee meeting will start at 6:30, and we're going to try to get all the business done in a half hour. So that's our objective. So we hope you all come, or as many of you as possible, come to the panel, because this is something that's going to, over the long run, radically affect the streetscape. Yes? Oh,
Who will be on the panel? Is the panel representing those who are sponsoring these many scooters?
Sure, I will.
Or is it a discussion of the impact of these various vehicles on the sidewalks, the streets, and all?
I just want to take this opportunity to thank Elizabeth for putting the panel together. She's done a lot of work on that.
But do you want me to answer? I mean, I'm happy to answer your question quickly.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
So just so people know, this legislation, many of you know, has been moving through the council specific to e-scooters. The decision has been made to do a pilot project somewhere in an outer borough. DOT is aware of that. What they are coming to do the night of our meeting is not to talk about, not to have it be a debate, not to have the community come out in support or against e-scooters. It's designed to be a very informational discussion about the legislation that's been proposed by Councilmember Espinal, who we expect to be there. To have DOT representation on the policy side to discuss the impact of the scooters, but not to weigh in on what's going to happen with the pilot project. To have a representative from one of the scooter companies who is looking to get involved. So the three major scooter companies who have been involved so far in the city have been Lime, Jump, and Bird. We will have most likely a representative from Bird who will be there, and then we'll have somebody from the local community who represents business and sort of the sidewalks. So the goal for this is to be absolutely informational and educational. It is not to be a debate about the proposed legislation that's making its way through. And I want to be very clear that the pilot program will not be done on the Upper West Side. But as many of us know, Uber and Lyft and City Bike 6 or 7 years ago, we never really did conversations in this neighborhood. And then all of a sudden they were here. So the goal is to try to get as much information out to the public in this neighborhood as possible next Tuesday.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I asked the question and we got a terrific answer.
Thanks.
Great. So we have one extremely minor business item. There was an application for a newsstand at Broadway and 85th Street. The committee unanimously approved it. We didn't see any problem with it.
Call the question.
Yep. All those in favor? Okay.
So I mentioned this issue a couple of months ago when there was this one. Regardless of what one thinks about how much pluses and minuses of newsstands taking up our sidewalk space and how much their fees are for the use of the sidewalk and for the use of the sidewalk, they make the money, a lot of the money by selling cigarettes. And there's a very modest, I don't remember what it is, additional fee to sell cigarettes, whether you're doing it on the sidewalk or elsewhere. I absolutely oppose using our sidewalks or any public city space, any land space in the city to sell cigarettes. I think you guys understand what happens after that. Of all the money we put, the secondhand smokes, all the money we put into treating the health problems of our citizens who smoke cigarettes, and I see no excuse to invite and approve in a discretionary situation, and a business that can sell cigarettes on our public sidewalks. Last time, and I think Andrew was still your co-chair at that time, Howard, I think somebody asked whether there had been any discussion or ever has been any discussion in your committee with newsstand applicants about whether they were willing not to sell cigarettes. And I think Andrew's response was that we had not been such a discussion. I'm not sure whether there could be. I don't see any reason why in concept there couldn't be such a discussion and such an agreement. But as long as there is not such an agreement with the applicant for whatever reason, I urge people to vote against any newsstand because that's a lot of how they do.
Just a point of information, they were asked that question, and their answer essentially amounted to, we intend to sell all products we are legally entitled to sell.
Okay, I'm not surprised by that, and for that reason, I would oppose.
Okay, call the question. One more.
I just want to back that up, and I think that there are two levels here. One is approving individual newsstand applications. And I abstained and intend to abstain because I agree with you that I don't think our sidewalks should be used to sell not just cigarettes, but also sugar and lottery tickets and a lot of other vices. And they're prevented by law from selling any fresh fruit or any foods that are actually good for you. So I agree with you that people should either vote against or abstain. I do think there is the element of it being something that's beneficial for people to be able to start a business, but I think this is the wrong way for them to do so. I also urge our transportation committee, on which I sit, to have an actual discussion on our view on the policy and to make a recommendation to elected officials that the city change the policy towards newsstand.
It's an excellent suggestion for our next meeting, which will take place in a half hour. The other May meeting, okay, well, postpone it to May, but I think that would be great. It just, there was not an interest in holding this person to a different standard than all the other newsstand owners. Roll call question.
All those in favor? Those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Those opposed? 1, 2, abstaining. 1, 2, abstaining. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
26. Next, we move along to the business and consumer.
Hello. No, you take it. I'm not good. No. Here, co-chair. I'm just here for council.
Okay, so the first item is the new application to the SLA for 2-year liquor licenses. 239 West 105th Street. This is, it was a transfer application. So of an existing business, this is the old location of Abbey Park. And then 44 West 63rd Street is the former location of the S. Chowder House inside the Empire Hotel. Any questions? There was.
Wait, I just want to clarify, because what's actually on the piece of paper is West 63rd Street and West 105th Street. Edge Chowder House is nowhere on. That is what
No, it's the former Edge Chowder House, and it's been empty, it's vacant, so it's going to have a new and exciting tenant.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, those in favor?
In favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, let me do this again. All those in favor, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. Those opposed? Abstentions?
The next item on the agenda, 917 Columbus Avenue. It was going to be a change of class change of liquor application. They did not show up, so as customary, we disapproved it. So this is a vote to disapprove. All those in favor?
Those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Opposed? Abstained? 34.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the renewal of unenclosed sidewalk cafes. On all of these ones, there was no opposition by the public. For some of them, like 2607 Broadway, 2745 Broadway, 936 Amsterdam Avenue, there was actually positive feedback from the community for those establishments. So, yes?
Just a small point. on 2745 Broadway, it's listed as DBA Henry's. Hasn't that changed?
Yes, it's called Boulevard. It's called Boulevard, no, not DBA Henry's. It was originally Henry's, and it is now called Boulevard.
So maybe.
Yeah, I guess we missed it, yeah.
So let's make sure we catch that
We're
when we
correct,
send in
yeah.
our approval.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favor?
Those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Opposed? Abstain?
Okay, so next item is it says sidewalk cafe renewals modifications, actually unenclosed sidewalk cafe renewal modifications. Actually, of these two, the only one that was really a modification was 960 Amsterdam Avenue, in which they were actually reducing the amount of space they were going to use. And 1018 Amsterdam Avenue actually ended up being a regular renewal. So there was public support for both of these venues, and there was no opposition. All those in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. Opposed?
Okay, so next item, it was a new unenclosed sidewalk cafe, 412 Amsterdam Avenue. Actually, this was a change of ownership. That's why it became a new application, but it's an existing location. It was just changing the ownership. There was no opposition. And any questions? All those in favor?
Favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. Opposed? Abstain?
Thank you.
So,
We brought before steering committee a resolution on the RAD program, part of NYCHA. This is a resolution that CB7 NYCHA task force worked on with Community Board 6, Community Board 3, Community Board 9, and Community Board 3. So the problem is the NYCHA had 16 developments in Manhattan that they wanted to convert to RAD. And so they decided to put them all together as one RFP. And the RFP was so large that smaller developers or smaller nonprofits who could have taken over one of the developments would not be able to because they're not large enough. So for example, Goddard Riverside in our community wanted to do an RFP for Wise Towers. But because the Goddard Riverside is too small, and they certainly can't do all 16. So this resolution, it explains the funding of NYCHA. It explains what a RAD is. It's a rental assistance demonstration project that allows right now, if you live in a NYCHA building, you get Section 9 funding. This would change the funding source to Section 8. The developer comes in and has to look at the whole building and decide what needs to be improved. It has 2 years to make all the improvements, at which point the tenants now become Section 8 tenant holders, which means they don't have the same kind of federal protections that they have at Section 9. So we're So the third be it resolved is that NYCHA revise its current Manhattan Pact RFP into smaller bundles, and this language is taken directly from a letter that Gail Brewer has written to RAD. Are there any questions? Ethel?
It's not a question, so much as I certainly one cannot be against this, but it is an exceptionally verbose resolution, taking a long time to get to the resolve, which after all, the major resolve is about greater degree of transparency and inclusion of the residents in the selection of the managers in the rental demonstration program. When you just said that the language of the third one is taken from a letter, I believe you said, written by the borough president.
Correct.
This, to me, I mean, it's okay, but it is also very lengthy and unclear, and it is utterly suited to be a letter, and not this kind of resolution beginning with the housing authority was created in 1936, which seems verbose and unnecessary. I don't find this, I find it to be that the point is a good one, but does not lend itself to this extremely lengthy, sometimes confusing resolution. Perhaps others don't feel that way, but I did try to get through it and finally got to a kernel that seems to lend itself to a letter.
I just have another question that maybe you consider putting in your request to NYCHA. Who's on the selection committee for who's selected through the RFP process, and is there representatives from the local NYCHA developments that are being sourced out in the RFP?
It's for the, it talks about community stakeholders, including community-based organizations that reside.
So is it Community Board 7 or somebody from
Well, that's what we're asking. We're asking that.
Okay. Thank you.
So, you know, it's complicated when you do a resolution with a group of other community boards. You have to negotiate. You know, it's like writing. You know, the larger the committee, the harder it is to write something.
Yes.
Okay. Questions been called. All those in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Those opposed?
Anyone abstaining?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Can I voted in favor, but I just want to make a suggestion to the draft of the resolution. I think the portion of the resolution up until the paragraph starts with the de Blasio administration is unnecessary to the resolution. When you start reading it, you think that it's about something that it's not about. So I would suggest
we can edit it.
That you edit it and start with the de Blasio administration.
This is what I said.
All right, have a committee. Who's doing housing? Oh, sorry. Land use has withdrawn its people. Land use has taken this resolution off the table for tonight. It seems that there's more time for just a more detailed discussion at the land use meeting. So
that is withdrawn.
It's been withdrawn for tonight. There is no resolution, but there will be a resolution in May.
Hi, I'm a little under the weather, so go easy on me with the feedback, if you don't mind. So this is a pretty meaty resolution as well. It's in support of 6 distinct pieces of legislation that have both the Senate and Assembly bill, or at least 5, but just one is a general provision that's not yet been legislated. So I'm just going to run through them really quickly. So number one is to eliminate vacancy decontrol. So that is when a permit can be removed from rent stabilization when the rent exceeds $2,733 per month. The second is to eliminate the 20% statutory bonus of vacancy when apartment turns over. Third is to reform preferential rent, which is something we've in the past passed resolutions in favor of, so that a tenant cannot have their rent raised from a preferential rent to the legal rent during their tenancy. It would be upon turnover of a unit. Fourth would be to eliminate rent increases that are allowed for major capital improvements and individual apartment improvements. Fifth would be to extend good cause eviction to all, so that those who are not currently in most stabilized units, they would get the same rights to not be able to be evicted from their apartments without good cause, which is something like nuisance, illegal activity, or non-payment of rent. Six is removal of the geographic restrictions of the Emergency Tenant Protection Act, so that would allow municipalities to opt in to the law and take up rent stabilization if they so wished. And that is it. And I know that was really quick, so please ask questions and I'll do my best to answer them. Mark.
It's not a question. I support the resolution. I have a couple of concerns about the elimination of MCIs, because I'm afraid that'll mean that it's a license to let buildings fall into disrepair. But overall, I think that this will, if nothing else, start a conversation that is sorely needed. So I support the legislation and I support the resolution.
I definitely hear that, and I thought that would be a feeling of concern among this group, so.
Can I comment?
Yeah.
I think what we should do is not to get rid of MCI, simply to make sure they're not permanent. So for example, if the landlord spends $100,000, it shouldn't be something that goes on in perpetuity. So the landlord can recoup $6 million. It's not to get rid of MCI.
I completely agree with you, but that's not what the bill says.
That's true. It just strikes the language allowing MCIs. But just to give a little more background, this is signing on to a campaign, Housing Justice for All. It's sort of this complete package of bills. So several other community boards have passed similar resolutions. If we so chose, we could choose to not support a specific provision. If we found it too controversial, I would be open to that if it meant passing the rest. That would be.
Yeah, I mean, I just really worry that we're dooming tenants to live in increasingly decrepit conditions. Because what's the incentive for landlords to improve the units if they have no way of recouping the cost of making those improvements? And I agree with you that if the goal is just to have it not be permanent, but that's not how it goes.
I think that the sentiment is that Division of Homes and Community Renewal does not do its due diligence in reviewing the. Yeah, I mean, I agree. HCR could always be reformed, but that's an executive power that you know the legislation cannot cover. Richard.
Yeah, two things. I think what if you're willing, we can add to the resolution a sense of the board that as to the MCI, the legislature should consider amending it so that MCIs are still available, but that no landlord is able to recoup more than 100% of his investment or something, wording to that effect. And still support, I understand why you want to support the group, you know, and I do too. So we can still support, sign on to the resolution, but just add a suggestion or an observation to that.
Can I consider that a friendly amendment? Or?
My second question is.
You can accept it as
okay.
This resolution does not seek renewal of rent stabilization. Is that sort of assumed it's going to happen?
Yeah.
I think this is
yeah.
A separate. Yeah, I think we're assuming that. You know, that's a good question. But
I feel safer maybe if we just add it. We support renewal of rent stabilization.
I think we're assuming, yes, this is a part of the renewal package. When it goes through, these are the provisions we want added to the overall renewal. We want a betterment and a renewal.
One other thought, and I don't know exactly what the answer is, but if we're eliminating vacancy decontrol, in theory, you're creating more apartments that are vacant that are still subject to rent regulation. And a question I would have is, what is the process for allocating those? And is it purely up to the landlord to find his or her friends and relatives to move into those apartments, or is there some way to make sure that they're equitably distributed?
I think we're just saying we're removing the rent level threshold, so it wouldn't matter what the rent level is when the apartment's vacated. It wouldn't become destabilized. That makes sense.
What about the income level? I'm sorry.
So this does not touch the income level provision. I don't recall off the top of my head what the top income.
So would you want to deregulate it if the person, the resident's income is over certain amount?
That is in the law as currently written.
Anyone taking the permit.
Yeah, so, but I'm just asking what this is calling for.
This is not calling for any change in that.
I think Paul has a question.
Yeah.
Why would they not make succession and rent stabilized units easier?
I mean, I don't think that's within the parameter of this resolution. You mean just like why are succession rights difficult
When
in the
someone
laws?
wants to succeed, the apartment in a rent stabilized building, there were so many things, criterion that have to be met. It makes it very difficult for someone to succeed a rent stabilized unit.
I've never gone through the process myself. I mean, I know succession rights do exist, so I don't feel like we can add that to the context of this resolution as written. Other questions, comments?
Call the rest of the committee.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so
Here,
all
here.
questions? All in
Those in
favor?
favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Those opposed? 1, 2. Abstaining? 1, 2, 3.
Okay, and then next resolution on the census, I think we're actually going to have to push because we had sort of drafted it planning on the state budget not passing on time, and it did, so we can't ask for money in it. But we're kind of having some discussions about what else we could put forward as a suggestion, since the full amount of community-based outreach funding was not allocated, only half was. So to be continued.
So that's withdrawn?
Yeah, so withdrawn.
Thank you.
Number 11.
Who's that?
Yes.
None of the other community boards.
What happened to 11? We're not doing.
Withdrawn.
Withdrawn.
Thank you.
So,
Good evening, everybody. While it's coming up, Christian is actually the chair of the Business and Consumer Issues Committee, but he continues for years to be our slide presenter, and I think you'll agree with me that trying to make sense of our landmarks applications as well as the parks rendition is so much clearer thanks to his making sure that we have these things. So you're joining me in thanking him. For those of you who are astute students of our previous resolutions, you'll of course remember approving in 2014 this rooftop addition. It never actually made it to LPC because this is a townhouse on West 84th Street, and according to the Department of Buildings, this is too tall to build there. I would like the building examiner who examined this building to take a look at 200 Amsterdam Avenue, but that's not the resolution that's before you. If you go to the next slide, please. The next slide shows you what they are proposing to do instead. They are being prohibited from enclosing their rooftop addition, so they're proposing a pergola. Yes, I had moved the word up, which essentially is a shade structure with a footprint. This is the rear view. You're looking from behind, from the donut into, obviously up at an angle, looking into the enclosure. This is a stair bulkhead that will grant access to the roof. When we go to the next one, this is the same thing from the front. You'll notice that there is a very nice wood flooring, and it's emulated by a wood rail that is there to keep the fire department from falling off the front of the building because the cornice isn't tall enough. You can sort of see that there are louvers up here. This board approved the full enclosed rooftop addition. So our committee looked at this with a generous eye, but the resolution was not unanimous. There were concerns that it wasn't decorative enough, it wasn't ornamented enough. And the other thing to know is, could you go back one slide, please? This rear view, although not as full as this because it's obviously a projection from above, is actually visible from the street because there is a gap between the corner tall building and the next townhouse building on 83rd Street. So if you stop and look through the alleyway, you'll actually see this railing and maybe a little bit of this louvered roof, but it is still transparent going through this way. Are there any questions or anybody want to be heard on this one? What question's been called? All those in favor?
It's not a very good rendering. It really
Hold
doesn't
on.
show the louvers very well, but
The question's called.
Okay, so now we're going to call a question. All those in favor, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Those opposed? Abstaining?
Anybody abstaining?
32.
Okay, the next one is on 72nd Street, West 72nd Street on the north side of the street. May be familiar, obviously Aroma is not there anymore, but here it is in its current condition. A big, bold, red and white sign prominently featuring Benjamin Moore. Another sign down here doing the same thing. And then there are these two blade signs. And the overwhelming impression is Benjamin Moore, not the local merchant. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is now the existing and the proposed. Janovic is a name that may be familiar to some of you folks. And so what they're proposing to do is to have cutout letters to replace the big sign here, cutout letters of Benjamin Moore with its logo to replace the sign here. Notice also that they're in white instead of that very bright red. And I think there's one more slide. There it is. This shows you what the blade signs will look like. These are the existing to the left and the proposed to the right. They are, again, emulating the typeface of the company itself, a local merchant with a few stores in the area. Is that the end of those slides? I think it is. Okay. This is a busy commercial district. It is actually in the historic district, but it is, the committee's view was that this was an improvement on the existing condition. Are there any questions? Questions been called? All those in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. Opposed? Abstaining?
Okay, the next one is 150 West 79th Street, and this is yet another window replacement. This is a master plan. It is not a replacement plan in that this is setting the template for replacing windows into the future, but the building isn't going to replace them all at once. What I want to show you here is, so this shows you the front facade of the building. That's the only thing we're talking about. And there are a series of single punch windows and then tripartite windows, single punch and tripartite. But what I also want to call to your attention is that there's a limestone, and there'll be a photograph later, but it's a little bit small. A limestone base and then a limestone mini cornice here, another mini cornice up here with surround detail that around these windows. Again, with these pilasters with detail up here on the 11th and 12th floors. And then a very ornate cornice above with brackets, and there's actually, sort of wedding cakey kind of things up there. Can we go to the next one, please? This is showing you of the windows that are existing and the windows that are proposed. The windows that are proposed are aluminum-clad 1/1 windows with a slightly better profile, slightly better dimension in the millions and millions than exist before. So why is this before you? Because they're proposing 1/1, and the original condition was 6/1, except for some of them were 4/1.
But they were divided light originally, and they are proposing to have 1/1 non-divided light windows. Can we go to the next one, please? So, Christian, if you could indulge me, could you enlarge this so that we get a little bit of bigger? Okay, thank you. That's perfect. Now, this is a pretty good showing you of the lower portion of the building that is fairly ornately decorated. I didn't call out to you these little mini Juliet balconies. Can you scooch a little bit to the right? And that shows you some of the decoration up at the top, thanks to the tree. And then could you go to the next slide, please? No, the next slide. Thank you. And what I want to call to your attention, you'll remember this building from last month. This is the White House, the one on 86th Street in Central Park West, which had a limestone base and then a very plain vanilla sort of flat front along all three of its primary facades. And if you go to the next slide, this is the building that had a master plan that we showed you in January. And this one has fairly detailed polychrome detail above the mini cornice with surrounds around some of the windows up there, and then fairly ornate detail down here as well. You see it on both the side street as well as on the Riverside Drive elevation. Why am I showing you all these three buildings? The reason is what I heard at Landmarks Preservation last month when we brought our approval of the building on Central Park West. We approved, again, the issue there was divided light, 6/1 versus 1/1. And we approved 1/1 for a variety of reasons, some of which included that it would create this hodgepodge effect forevermore, and some of which involved the practicalities of those applications. What Landmarks said, and I just offer this to you for your consideration, what Landmarks, because we're not bound by what Landmarks decides, we can certainly chart our own path. What Landmarks seems to summarize as the way to approach these kinds of applications is to look at whether the divided light that is proposed to be eliminated or removed from these facades is the primary or a huge contributing factor to the fabric that was included in the historic district, or whether the building facade is ornate and decorated in a way that losing that additional fabric of the divided light and the multi-pane windows is not a significant loss when compared with the totality of the facade. Our committee decided on, if we go back to the original applicant building, go all the way, yeah, that's it, yeah. Our committee decided, both because this is a fairly ornate facade, and because, again, a master plan would leave us with the potential that this guy would replace his windows and they would look out of place. Actually, the worst would be here. Some guy on the one side of a symmetrical facade would replace, but it would take years. It also would add cost and so forth, an issue for some but not others. And that it would be a disincentive to replace windows if they had to replace them with this kind of multi-light windows. And then there's always the concern that instead of having real multi-light windows, they would have those faux things where they take a piece of plastic and apply it to the exterior of the glass and make it look like it's a divided light, but it's really not, and it really doesn't look like it is. So those are the considerations that we weighed and came up with an approval of the application that you see before you. So I'll entertain questions. Peter.
Yeah. I think the divided lights are really a very difficult problem. I've been to a number of buildings, another building on Central Park West at the corner of 88th Street that has the divided lights on top, and I have friends who live in that building, and those are all faux divided lights, and they're coming apart. And it looks pretty awful. I mean, it's an attempt to copy the past, not using the methods of the past, but using some sort of plastic gimmick that emulates it, and it's the worst of all alternatives. That's one of the reasons I think our committee voted to keep the 1/1 and not have 6/1.
No, there's another question or comment from Clara. Do you need the mic?
I followed your reasoning and I read your resolution in advance. But, and I heard what you said about what you heard LPC say, but I don't quite understand how.
Could you use a?
I'm sorry.
My question is,
I'll repeat.
is LPC actually in the master plan context, actually approving master plans that call for instance, 1/1 or even single pane, when originally it was 6/1 or 3/1 or whatever? Are there ever actually approving master plans that are different from the original?
So the question, in case you didn't hear, is LPC approving master plans where the proposed new windows are 1/1 or single pane, whereas the original condition was 6/1? That's exactly why this is before us and before the commission at a public hearing rather than being approved at staff level. They won't do that without this kind of a context. B, the answer is yes. I showed you our January committee. So our February resolution and our March resolution. The commission approved the building that is on Riverside Drive with the ornate detail that I showed you, and it did not take action. They hardly ever vote no, but several commissioners, including Michael Goldblum and Michael Devonshire, who are not always the most aggressive about some of these things, made it clear that, and remember that the building on Central Park West last month was a single apartment, and they were in no way dissuaded from disapproving because of that, because they said this is a death by 1,000 cuts, that enough single applications becomes a de facto master plan because of the power of precedent. And so they didn't disapprove it, they sent it back to the drawing board, but the clear implication is that they need a better solution or a better argument than the ones I just gave you to approve it. So the answer is yes, they do approve these, and that decorative or non-decorative nature or utilitarian nature of the facade is at least part of their thinking on why they approve or disapprove these applications.
Mark.
Yeah.
Real quick question. It seems an issue with the master plans is that it leaves the building in limbo with a slow, gradual changeover. Is there any way we can set a time limit and say you have to complete this within 10 years, 20 years, just so it's not permanent, and make the building have a budget to do that over time?
Great idea. The landmarks preservation law has no such power. All right, the question's been called. All those in favor of approving this building's master plan as proposed?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Opposed?
Anybody opposed?
Anybody opposed? Okay, ladies, stay.
Are you
I think
opposed?
they're
All right, 32.
Thank you. The last of our applications, resolutions for your consideration tonight is on West 82nd Street. It's 150 West 82nd, and it is essentially the expansion of an existing rooftop addition, an existing penthouse. And this is the building here, and you can see that portions of the penthouse are already visible, and through the tree you can see they are here. Please go to the next. All right, so now we're going to show you a couple of slides of the existing and proposed conditions. The interesting part of this is that they're proposing to expand the footprint of the existing penthouse, but actually bring down the height of some of the other things that are on the roof. So here is the proposed, this is the existing condition, and this is the proposed. And now you're looking from the west, looking east, and you'll see that this right here, it's in red, it's a little hard to see, is new height. As Peter correctly pointed out at the committee, this whole wall is coming toward you and coming up to the building line instead of being set back from the side court. Whoops. Oh, okay, great. There it is. And then this red, and this red are additional volume being added to the roof. Can we go to the next, please? This is the same from the other side, and this shows you, actually this one right here, shows you, see the dotted red line here, and then there's a dotted red line here. Those are areas in which some of the furniture on the roof, if you will, some of the bulk on the roof is being brought down, even as the footprint is expanding toward you. And then if we go to the next 4 slides really quickly, this is obviously the front facade existing, and you see how the bulk is moving. Next one, please. This is one of the side facades, and you see how the bulk is moving, and in this case, moving both, this part here comes down, this part gets expanded, and there's new fenestration here. Next one, please. Same thing here. You have a modest facade that is being expanded. All of this is set back. This is now looking at it as if it were in a flat plane, but the rooftop addition is set back originally 23 feet from the front facade. Now it'll be 15, but still not visible from right in front of the building. It's only visible, as you saw, from up and down the street a ways. Is there one more? Yeah, that's the other side, and you'll see that some of this terrace area is being enclosed. Are there questions? So call the question. All in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, Roberta, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Opposed? Anybody opposed?
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody. We have, I just want to remind you of some upcoming events. Before I take a motion to adjourn, we have the Urban Fellow coming on next Monday, the 8th, to talk about his database and the maps. And then on the 9th, we have an early transportation meeting from 6:30 to 7. And then at 7, we have a program, a panel, thanks to Elizabeth, on electric modes of transportation, new electric modes of transportation. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.